Here at mentalfloss.com is a story by Jake Rawson entitled Weird Weather, The Mystery of the Oakville Blobs. And Mr. Rawson begins. In August 1994, Oakville, Washington, police officer David Lacey was driving his cruiser on patrol when he noticed it had begun to rain. This wasn't unusual in Oakville, where water drops could splatter against windshields 275 days out of the year. But something about this storm seemed different. When Lacey turned his wipers on, he noticed the rain was not being swept aside. It started to smear as though someone had taken petroleum jelly and smudged it across his windshield. "This isn't right," Lacey told a friend who was riding with him. "We're out in the middle of nowhere. Where did this come from?" When they pulled over at a gas station, Lacey put on gloves and felt the substance, which was goopy and viscous. Somehow the skies over Oakville had opened and let loose a baffling mystery. Officer Lacey was perplexed, but not concerned. Not until he began to feel seriously ill. Were it not for the Blobs, Oakville may have remained largely out of mind for most. Once a logging town, Oakville, named after Washington's lone native oak tree, was incorporated in 1905 and is currently home to roughly 700 residents. Life moves a little more slowly here, with one foot in the past. A building thought to be the last bank robbed on horseback still stands. Locals come out in droves for the rodeo shows. But then on August the 7th, 1994, started the strange rain. Officer Lacey was among the first to see it, but so did others. One woman stepped outside to find the translucent blobs dotting the ground. Each, she later recalled, was about half the size of a grain of rice. Most estimates put the frequency of the rain events at 6 over a 3-week period. Lacey told the Unsolved Mysteries when the program profiled the event in 1996. The substance was very mushy, almost like you had Jell-O in your hand. You could pretty much squish it through your fingers. We knew it was not something we would normally see, but we never experienced it before. We had some bells go off in our heads that said basically, "This isn't right. This isn't normal." Then began the wave of illness. Lacey said he became very ill with fatigue and nausea. Resident Beverly Roberts told the Chronicle that she grew curious enough about the goo to take some home for a closer look. Within a day, she said, she was struck by weird symptoms, including vertigo, and she had to seek medical care. Others reported upper respiratory infections and inner ear infections at roughly the same time the blobs appeared. Roberts told Unsolved Mysteries, everybody in town came down with the flu. Resident Sonny Barclift told the Lewiston Tribune that she first noticed the blobs dotting a black asphalt roof on her family's 29-acre farm. A short time later, her mother, Dottie Hearn, sought treatment for dizziness and nausea. After touching it, Sonny also reported fatigue. What appeared harmful to humans was allegedly fatal to animals. Roberts said she knew of 12 animals that had died since the blobs appeared. When she collected some for a sample, she noted a dead frog and a dead raven just a few feet away. On the farm, Dottie and Sonny's kitten collapsed and died. When Hearn complained of her symptoms, her physician, Dr. David Little, believed they were a result of an inner ear problem, unrelated to exposure to the substance. Still, he did agree to have the goo tested at the hospital, where technicians found human white blood cells. Samples of the goo were also collected by the Washington State Department of Health and the Washington State Department of Ecology. The Department of Health found 2 bacteria. Whether these could cause illness in people was debated, although one of them, which was found in nature, can potentially be a pathogen. Before further studies could be undertaken, Health Department microbiologist Mike McDowell said that the samples disappeared from his lab. Mike Osweiler of the Department of Ecology told the Seattle Post-Intelligencer that the samples contained a number of cells of various sizes, and that they came from a once-living creature. In contrast to the hospital's findings, however, Osweiler added that the samples had not been observed to have human white blood cells, because the cells present had no nuclei, which are found in human cells. All except for red blood cells, apparently. Because the lab testing was largely inconclusive, other theories cropped up. One thought was that jellyfish had somehow been swept up, destroyed, and scattered, either through some kind of natural event or something man-made. Another posited that the Air Force, which was said to be performing bombing practice runs over the Pacific, had perhaps blown jellyfish clear out of the water and over Oakville. Or worse, that they were conducting biological weapons testing, while the Air Force confirmed bombing practice by the 354th Fighter Squadron. It had taken place 50 miles away. Excuse me. Dr. Little theorized the blobs were discharged from a plane as waste. That, he said, would explain both the white blood cells and the fact that it sickened and killed animals, since planes use antifreeze in their lavatory systems. But the FAA shot down any idea it could have come from aircraft. Noted that the chemicals used would turn any waste the color of blue. The most credulous explanation, excuse me, is that the blobs were actually star jelly, a slang term for a phenomenon in which things like slime molds appear gooey. It can also refer to frog spawn vomited up on land by overindulging magpies. It's been described as far back as the 14th century, when it was thought to be residue from meteor showers. This would not account for the blobs falling from the sky, though it's unclear precisely how many people reported seeing the drops fall, or whether they simply accompanied rain. It's possible a natural occurrence like star jelly was accompanied by a handful of illnesses, and someone established correlation without causation. It is also difficult to corroborate the most sensational testimonies that the goo fell from the sky and that samples had disappeared. Officer Lacey and Mike McDowell of the Department of Health have rarely spoken about the blobs beyond their appearances on unsolved mysteries. There has never been a concrete answer for the blobs or their origin, though the event has not reoccurred. Nor is Oakville the only place to experience unusual precipitation. In 1876, meat appeared to descend from the sky in Olympian Springs, Kentucky, possibly the result of vultures flying overhead. Frogs have been known to fall after being picked up by a storm. Although they don't say how the frogs were picked up, do they? The only other clue came courtesy of Jim and Kathy Bellinger, who reported seeing dead crabs along the Washington coast around the time the blobs were reported. A clear gel was nearby. Both Kathy and her dog touched the goo, and both became ill the following day. It's weird, said Kathy.